So there's a fire at a judge's house. This is in South Carolina. I want to go over the latest on this. This is some video, I guess, of the fire. And we don't know the exact cause, but this kind of thing doesn't happen often. I mean, I'm sure you guys know it.
You can hear this thing burning.
Yeah, the person even in the video says you can hear it burning. This says here, police have launched an investigation after South Carolina Judge Diane Goodstein's Edisto Beach home burned to the ground after an apparent explosion. Goodstein's husband, former state senator Arnold Goodstein, was rushed to the hospital along with other family members. Judge Goodstein was walking on the beach when the fire started. Her husband, Arnie, was in the house with children and perhaps grandchildren. The family had to escape by jumping from a window or balcony. I'm told there were injuries from the fall, such as broken legs. Jeez. South Carolina Law Enforcement Division is currently investigating this to see the fire if it's any evidence of arson. At this time, we do not know whether the fire was accidental or arson. Until that determination is made, Chief Keel has alerted local law enforcement to provide extra patrols and security. So this is in South Carolina. Stephen Miller, I'm going through everything. Stephen Miller melts down as MAGA is blamed for the fire at the judge's house. I don't know. I'll just say this: we don't know the situation with this stuff. I think the blaming this person here, I think they're running for Congress. They say Trump, Stephen M. MAGA world have been doxing and threatening judges who rule against Trump. So I guess this person has been ruling against Trump, including Judge Goodstein. Today, someone committed arson on judge's home, severely injuring her husband and son. Will Trump speak out against the extreme right that did this? So all I'll say is I don't think we know for sure if it's arson or not. But I don't think this is random. I mean, this just doesn't happen very often. And you just want to be careful of the stuff that you say, but, this kind of thing, I don't think I've ever seen something like this, to be honest. I want to read more details. It says South Carolina judges $1.5 million home, which the value isn't really that important. It's more important to the safety of the family, and we also don't want escalating violence. Destroyed in a huge fire with family forced to jump out the window, and then, as that one description said, they broke their legs when they jumped out, I guess, possibly. A beachfront property belonging to a South Carolina judge has burned to the ground in huge fire that sent 3 members of her family to a hospital, including former state senator husband. Circuit Court Judge Diane Goodstein, 69, so they're older, was out walking when the blaze erupted at 11:30 a.m. Saturday morning at Edisto Beach. Her husband, Arnold Goodstein, so he's 81, so they're definitely older, and other members of the family had to escape via upper stories as the fire took hold. So this must have happened really fast then. South Carolina Chief Justice John Kittredge subsequently told the news the fire began with an apparent explosion. So you don't know exactly what happened. Let's be clear on that. Judge Goodstein was walking on the beach when the fire started. Her husband, Arnie, was in the house with children and perhaps grandchildren. The family had escaped by jumping out a window or a balcony. I'm told there were injuries from the fall, such as broken legs. Arnie's injuries may have been more serious. He was airlifted to the hospital. Jeez. Arnold Goodstein served in the South Carolina House of Representatives from 71 to 73. And again, I guess 69, 70, and then 75 to 79. So they've been in politics for a while. The couple's son, Arnold Goodstein III, also taken to the emergency room for treatment. And you don't want to see, like I said, first you're concerned about loss of life and are people okay? Then you're concerned about are we seeing escalation in the USA? And again, this is a judge's house, essentially. A spokesperson for the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division said the department is currently investigating the cause of the fire and yet to determine whether it's an accident or result of arson. Last month, Judge Goodstein oversaw a controversial case weighing whether or not her state should hand over sensitive voter registration documents to the federal government and ultimately ruled against Donald Trump. So this would be someone that Donald Trump doesn't like, right? So, just going over things that we know and also being honest about what we don't know. The Department of Justice had requested that South Carolina officials turn over the personal data of more than 3.3 million voters, revealing their names, addresses, birthdays, driver's license, and the last 4 digits of their social security numbers. Okay, so this is where it gets, I can already see that, looking ahead, that they were talking about she's gotten multiple death threats in the past. This is what it says here. The administration was seeking to compare the information with the separate database in order to root out alleged illegal immigrants. It's suspected of being unlawfully permitted to cast votes in state elections. The judge goes in and had reportedly received multiple death threats in response to her September 2nd ruling. So this is just a month ago then, which placed her at odds with Trump and South Carolina's Governor Henry McMaster, who said the circuit court was, quote, wrong to place itself in the way of the government. Filed an emergency petition to overturn the verdict. South Carolina Supreme Court duly sided with McMaster, dropping Goldstein's temporary restraining order in a 6-page opinion of September 11th that argued the judge had not made clear what damage she believed the original plaintiff, local voting rights, might suffer if released. So this was all about the voting situation in South Carolina. I'll just say this, like, some of these states don't have a great history, let's talk about South Carolina, of protecting people's civil rights. And regardless of, what the situation is, again, I'm most first concerned of are people okay? And then you're worried about, is there escalation? This also comes at a time when Trump, he just says stuff like, I'll show you what I mean.
Portland is burning to the ground. You have agitators, insurrectionists. All you have to do is look at the television, turn on your television, read your newspapers. It's burning to the ground. The governor, the mayor, the politicians are petrified for their lives.
Mr. President,
and you have a judge like that, that judge ought to be ashamed of him.
Right, so he's always you can see right there, he's always attacking judges, blaming judges, etc. And then, he's claiming that things are happening that aren't. Judge rules against him, says like you're just not tethered to the facts, Trump. And this is a dangerous turn to where we're at. And again, we don't know the cause of it. I'm just saying I don't want to see any of this stuff. The problem I've been noticing, and this is something that we just have to have an honest conversation about these things, is if you want to talk, say, for example, the Charlie Kirk shooting. For me, when I saw it, I was just like, there's a crazy person that shot someone. That's how I read that immediately. And, I noticed that suddenly people, and I'll just keep it that way, people were starting to say, oh, well, it's just one side, or no, that the shooter has to be another side or whatever. And I never resorted to thinking that the shooter has to be on any particular side. And it's kind of what the narrative has to be in the USA, or the narrative people want it to be, I guess a better way to put it, because I always want to be careful with my words. It's just many people right now are pushing like it's my side against your side, that kind of stuff. And I always try to keep it in terms of, guys, we're all human in this, and we're all trying to figure out ways to put food on the table, make ends meet, right? How can we get along with each other? And I just noticed that the way the U.S. discourse has been, right, the dialogue for a long time, is just people fighting and sides fighting. I think there's multiple channels out there that you may be watching this. They always refer to, right and left and that kind of stuff. You'll notice I don't ever use that kind of language. I don't see it that way. I think, the vast majority of us, the 99.9% of us, are way more in common than not. It's actually just that there's a few group of people out there that say the top 1% that benefit from the other groups basically fighting each other, and they just want to keep people potentially fighting. And you can argue, that for some people say, oh, well, we once we win, everything's gonna be great, but it's not really about that, because there's no winning in this stuff. There's no winning in people's houses burning down or anything like that. But I'm very concerned, and I do point out the Trump stuff, because when people at the top, they say these things that just get people riled up nonstop. They'll claim things that aren't true, which is very, very damaging to the environment that we're in. And even someone said, for example, the Daniel Goldman person, as I mentioned, we don't know. He's saying, oh, well, definitely has to be MAGA or whatever. We don't know that for sure. So, you know, I'm careful, but I do read through the stuff. I said, if this person's gotten death threats, it doesn't look good. But I'm honest with you on that. And if it turns out that they find someone, and we'll have this serious discussion about this stuff. But either way, I also want to acknowledge it doesn't necessarily mean that every single person, you know, in a particular group or whatever would do these kind of things. That, you know, for me, if we find out it was, you know, foul play, I'll just say it was a crazy person. But I do acknowledge that there's a real negative culture right now in USA that is encouraging this kind of stuff. So we need to obviously tone this stuff down, and it's so hard to talk about these things because you want to be honest at the same time and also keep the temperature down in USA. And I hope you understand my feelings on these things. I don't want the democracy to devolve in this way. So that's my thoughts on this. Please be safe out there, and I'll catch you on the next video.